What's up guys, my name is Stoody and I'd like to welcome you all back to another video. In today's video I'm going to be doing my round 11 tips for the 2023 AFL season. Now before we get into this week's tips, I'm going to go ahead and see how I went last week. So last week I got 7 out of 9 correct tips, so it was a pretty decent week. And I'm now on 68 total tips for the season. Not only that, but I've moved up to 891st in the world. So I'm in the top 1,000 for tipping in the world. So that's really good as well. That's really exciting stuff. So we'll go through the 2 tips that I got wrong. So I tipped Melbourne to beat Port Adelaide, but Port Adelaide only just beat Melbourne. And also I tipped Richmond to beat Essendon, but Richmond were robbed big time. So really, you can count that as a correct tip. So in reality, I got 8 out of 9. Alright, so now it is time to move on to this week's tips. So on Friday night, we have Sydney taking on Carlton at the SCG. I'm going to be doing Carlton in this one by 12 points. Now, I know there's an old saying, don't trust Carlton. However, there's another saying. Whenever a team gets smashed, usually by a good opposition, and another team only wins narrowly, usually against a poor opposition, about 95% of the time, the team that gets smashed goes on to beat the team that only wins narrowly. So that's why you got to tip Carlton. Sydney also have their injury problems. Carlton are in some pretty bad form, so is Sydney. I just feel Carlton are going to have a lot more to prove, and I think Carlton have the better team going into this game. That's why I think Carlton will go on to win this one. Moving on to Saturday afternoon, we have St Kilda taking on Hawthorn at Marvel Stadium. I'm going to be tipping St Kilda in this one by 22 points. Obviously, Hawthorn had a really good game against West Coast, destroying them by 116 points, but that is West Coast. St Kilda got a reasonably narrow win against GWS away from home. I think St Kilda should be too strong for the Hawks, especially playing at home. But I do think Hawthorn will be reasonably competitive in this game. Moving on to the other Saturday afternoon game, we have Melbourne taking on Fremantle at the MCG. Now I'm going to be tipping Melbourne in this one by 4 points. Melbourne are going to be without Clayton Oliver, so it's going to be tough for them to beat Fremantle, who are finding some form. I think Fremantle have won maybe 3 in a row now. If you guys remember round 11 2022, exactly 1 year before, Melbourne played Fremantle at the MCG and actually choked a 31-point lead against Fremantle and lost by like 40 points or something ridiculous like that. So I wouldn't be surprised if Fremantle win this, but I'm going to tip Melbourne as it's a safe option. And also it's at Melbourne's home ground. Moving on to Saturday twilight, we have Geelong taking on the GWS Giants at GMHBA Stadium. I'm going to be tipping Geelong in this one by 38 points. Obviously, it's at home for Geelong. The Giants, they have been competitive in most of their games, but just aren't able to win the closer ones. I do think GWS will put up a bit of a fight at some point, but Geelong should be too strong. They're coming off 2 losses in a row. They'll be desperate to turn things around. They're at home. I think Geelong will be able to get the job done here. Moving on to Saturday night, we have the Gold Coast Suns taking on the Western Bulldogs at Tayo Stadium. I think Gold Coast have 2 Tayo Stadium games in a row, which is weird. But I'm going to be tipping the Western Bulldogs in this one by 31 points. The Bulldogs are in some outstanding form. They've won 7 of their last 8 games. The Suns are in some pretty decent form too. But I think the Western Bulldogs should be too strong for the Suns. I think the Dogs are definitely premiership contenders this year, whereas the Suns trying to make the 8. With that being said, the Western Bulldogs should be able to get the job done here. The other Saturday night game, we have the West Coast Eagles taking on Essendon at Optus Stadium. I'm going to be tipping Essendon in this one by 63 points. Obviously, West Coast got absolutely annihilated against Hawthorn last week. It was embarrassing for them. Whereas Essendon, they only won last week because of match fixing. Essendon should be able to easily account for the Eagles here. But just because Hawthorn beat West Coast by 100 points doesn't mean everyone else will. That's something that won't happen every time. So Essendon, they'll win this comfortably. I don't understand why 6% actually tip West Coast. What is going on there? Moving on to Sunday afternoon, we have Richmond taking on Port Adelaide at the MCG. Now I'm going to be tipping, to a lot of people's surprise, I'm actually going to be tipping Richmond in this one by 10 points. I was tipping Port Adelaide all the way until I found out that Damien Hardwick has quit as coach. I'll do my own video on that another time, hopefully today. I'm not sure whether this one will come out first or the other one. But I think Richmond will want to win this one for Dimmer. They were severely robbed last week against Essendon. They really need to win this one if they're any chance of making finals. They're at home and Port are due for a loss. So I'm going to tip Richmond in this one in a bit of a risky tip. Moving on to the other Sunday afternoon game, we have Collingwood taking on North Melbourne at Marvel Stadium. Now, it's absolute bullshit because Collingwood have been robbed a home game. This is meant to be Collingwood's home game, but was being played at Marvel, which is North Melbourne's home ground. It's an absolute joke, but regardless, I'm tipping Collingwood by 72 points. They're way better than North Melbourne. North Melbourne almost beat Sydney last week, although Sydney, they're not that good at all. Collingwood are probably the best team in the league at the moment. They're 9-1. They're absolutely flying. They should go out there and smash North Melbourne despite being robbed their home ground advantage. Moving on to the Sunday twilight game, we have Adelaide taking on Brisbane at Adelaide Oval. I'm going to be tipping Brisbane in this one by 24 points. Adelaide have been reasonably competitive when they play against the top teams all year, and they have been beating the bottom teams. The only games they weren't really competitive in was last week against the Western Bulldogs and the Richmond game before, match fixing came into play, getting them back into the game, just for the Crows to get blown out again. So obviously it's in Adelaide, so I think the Crows will perform better than they did last week, because that Bulldogs game, I heard they were terrible. But Brisbane should be able to get the job done. They're just the better team, more experienced, and all of that. So that's it for this video. Feel free to leave your tips in the comment section down below. Be sure to subscribe for more content like this. Be sure to click the thumbs up button and leave a like on this video. Also be sure to become a channel member. Just simply click the join button next to my name. Also be sure to join my Discord server. It is called Australian Sports Community. Link to that is in the description. Also be sure to subscribe to my second YouTube channel. It is called Stoody Archives. Link to that is also in the description. Also be sure to follow me on my other social media accounts. I have Instagram, I have Twitter, and I also have TikTok. The username for all those is StoodyYT, and links to all of those will also be in the description. I hope you all had a good day, and I'll see you all in the next video.